Hubli-Dharwad. Today we are going to discuss 21st June's RE-NEET examination, and it's related to what questions. Hope so you people have performed very well into this particularly exam. अगर आप NCERT को लगन से पढ़ोगे तो इस एग्ज़ाम में 100% क्रैक कर जाओगे. ऐसे क्वेश्चंस इस बार नीट एग्जामिनेशन में, वो भी नीट एग्जामिनेशन में आए. सो व्हाट आई मीन टू से इज, इफ़ यू रीड NCERT thoroughly line by line, definitely you can crack this particularly NEET examination, which was totally based on what overall NCERT, right? So we'll start with this particularly what first question, that is 91st question and related to what biology subject, right? So I am your mentor, biology mentor, and we'll have a discussion related with what biology questions, that is 91st question. So what they say, the number of vertebrae in human is, right? They are only asking related to vertebrae. They are not asking related to overall bones, right? They are asking related to vertebrae. If you consider question number 91, right? Consider. So vertebrae, you will find out what option will be the what second option is correct, that is 26, right? Mainly if you consider cervical vertebrae are 7, then thoracic vertebra if you consider, they are 12, right? And then sacrum, which is 1, right? Then lumbar if you consider, lumbar they are 5, right? And coccyx, right? The last one, which is what 1. So totally if you consider how many, they are what particularly 26, right? Then moving on to the what next question, that is what after 91 you will find out second 92 question, that is which of the following statement is incorrect. Related to what they have mentioned, mainly they have related to pancreas they have mentioned. So 91th question, 92 question, right? What they are saying in option wise, one question says what you should find out incorrect one, right? Then they are saying what alpha cells of pancreas secretes what insulin, right? Then alpha cells of pancreas secretes what insulin. Glucagon stimulates the glycogen lysis. Beta cells of pancreas secretes what insulin. Alpha cells of pancreas secretes what glucagon. So based on this, if you consider, alpha cells of pancreas will secrete something called as what glucagon. It will secrete what glucagon. And beta cells will secrete what insulin. It will secrete insulin, right? And glucagon actually carries out stimulation of what this particularly glycogenolysis, right? Then answer will be what here first one, that is wrong or incorrect. That is what alpha cells of pancreas secrete insulin they have mentioned, but alpha cells of pancreas will secrete what glucagon. So wrong statement is what here, the first one. 92 answer is the first one, right? Then and we are discussing here, code, that is what 80, code number, question paper code is what 80. Then moving on to the what 93 question, what they are saying, given below are two statements. They have mentioned the class name Reptilia refers to the creeping or crawling mode of locomotion. Statement 2, all organisms belonging to the Reptilia have a 3-chambered heart. So in light of the above statements, choose the what most appropriate answer from the option given below. Is such kind of questions, how we are going to solve that, the concept what you have read, and based on that only you can have a what assumption and try to find out what actually correct answer. So here statement 1, what they have told, the class name Reptilia refers to creeping or crawling mode of what locomotion, then that is what correct, related to what reptile. All organisms belonging to reptile have a 3-chambered heart they are mentioning. But you people do remember, all amphibians and even reptiles if you consider, they got a 3-chambered heart, but exception is there. That is what exception, crocodile, right? So here they have mentioned all organisms belonging to reptile, right? Now crocodile is even reptile, but it got 4-chambered heart, and here they have mentioned 3-chambered heart. Then option will be what here? That is the second option. Statement 1 is correct, right? But statement 2 is what? Wrong. Statement 2 is wrong. That is what option 2 here, right? Now moving on to the next question, 94th. Which of the following statements related to pituitary glands are correct? So they are asking about what? Pituitary gland, right? So when you see pituitary gland, what they are mentioning, it is divided anatomically into adenohypophysis and neurohypophysis. Yes, anatomically it is divided into what? Adenohypophysis and neurohypophysis, like this. But this division is due to the what? Presence of what? Intermedia. Presence of what here? The particularly intermedia, right? Then it secretes what? Follicle stimulating hormone. Yes, it will secrete follicle stimulating hormone. Most of the what? Adenohypophysis, right? Which will actually known to be the right, which will actually known to be to form something called as what? Releasing hormones and even inhibitory hormones, right? And what neurohypophysis will do? Neurohypophysis will secrete something called as mainly oxytocin, right? Then or even what we call ADH, this is even can be secreted. ADH, one more name is what? Vasopressin, right? Then so follicle stimulating hormone is even secreted by means of adenohypophysis. Then they are saying it secretes what? Melatonin stimulating hormone. Yes, yes, definitely. Mainly whatever this intermedia will secrete something called here melatonin hormone, right? It will secrete or stimulate something called as melatonin hormone or melanocytes, what they are mentioned. So melanocytes, if it should get stimulate, melatonin hormone should be secreted. Then it does not secrete what? Prolactin. It does not. They are mentioning it as what? It does not secretes what? Prolactin. But prolactin, even this hormone is secreted by the particularly pituitary, right? So according to this, you should find out which of the following statement related to pituitary are correct they are mentioning. So if they are mentioning correct, then if you consider mainly, so you have to choose what? Either A, B, C is correct, or C and D is correct, B and C is correct, or A and B is correct, right? Then according to that, A, B, C, these are what? Actually correct answer. So according to this, if you consider A, B and C, these are the only correct answers you are going to find out. So here 94th answer will be, that is what? The first option. 94th option will be what here? The first option, alright. Now moving on to the next question, that is 95th one, right? So here what you have to find out? Match the following, right? Least 1 with what? Least 2, right? So now 95, consider, right? Now 95th question, they have mentioned one as a starch, one more they have mentioned something called as what? Antibody. Then they have mentioned something called as concavalin, right? Concavalin, right? Then they have mentioned what? Glut. This total question is related to what? Biomolecule, right? And in case consider related to starch, starch is known to be the what here? Energy storage. So second will be the correct for here, right? Energy storage, right? Antibody is mean to for what? To fight against infection. The first one will be the word correct, against infection, right? Concavalin, which is like what? Related to what? Secondary metabolite, where you consider mainly lactin will be the what? Correct answer, right? That is what? Fourth one. And glut4, which will bring up something called as glucose transportation, which will bring related to what here? The glucose transportation, transport. So based on this, you can match up. You can match here like what? A will be the what? 2, right? B will be the what 1, and C will be what here the fourth one, and D will be the what third one. So try to find out what the correct one. So according to that correct one, if you consider, that is what option 1 is correct. For 95 question, option 1 is correct. Right. Now moving on to the next question, that is what 96th. A simple question they have asked related to what frog. In water, frog carries what respiration using what? Mainly the particularly here 96th using what? Skin. Cutaneous form of what respiration is carried by means of what? Frog. Frog, when well developed adult frog, you find out during that period it will bring up what? Two types of what respiration. When it is in water, it will carry out what? Skin based respiration. Here option will be what? 4. And skin based respiration we mainly call it as cutaneous, and if it is lung based one, we are going to call it as what? Pulmonary form of what respiration. And when it is into the tadpole stage, as it is showing dimorphic, they are calling it as what? Frog here. So only we have to think about frog, not related to what? Tadpole. Tadpole, it will carry out based on the what? Lungs, right? Sorry, mainly based on the what? Gills, right? So here 96th question will be what? Option 4 here. Then again match the column they have mentioned. Again 97th question, 97th question, right? They have mentioned related to what here? Actually 97th, cristae they have mentioned, right? And cristae can be what? Seen. Cristae can be what? Seen with respect to the what? Infoldings. Infoldings in mitochondria. Infoldings in mitochondria, right? Then they have mentioned something called as cisternae, cisternae, and cisternaes are related to, they are related to what? Disc shaped structure, or disc shaped sac in Golgi apparatus, right? And then they have mentioned what? Thylakoids, specifically where they are present? They are present in chloroplast. So chloroplast, consider what it is. They have mentioned flat membrane sac in stoma of a chloroplast, where actually what? Photosynthetic light reaction will take place. Then lastly they have mentioned something called as what? Phospholipids. They have mentioned phospholipids here. And what left out here? Phospholipids you will find out in particularly cell membrane, right? You will find out in particularly cell membrane. So according to that, the option 1 is correct, where A is 2, B is 4, right? C is 1, and D is what? 2. That is what the correct answer for this 97th question. Moving on to the next question, that is 98th question, right? What they have mentioned? Phyllotaxy is a pattern of arrangement of, what here? The particularly leaves, right? It is related to what here? Leaves. Simple question. You can say phyllotaxy, which is referred to something called as what? Leaves arrangement with respect to the what? Plant, right? Then that option will be what? 4. Question number 99 you consider. Question number 99. Again they have given match the following, right? So here what they have mentioned? Structure. Spherical shape of what? Bacteria will be what? Spherical. Spherical will be mainly here cocci, right? Right. Then a rod shaped bacteria. Simple question it is, right? Rod shaped bacteria, what we call it as? Bacilli, right? Then they have mentioned comma shaped. Comma shaped is which one? Vibrio, right? What it is? Vibrio. Then you will find out the presence of something called as what? Spirillum, which is nothing but what? Bacilli, which is nothing but what here? Bacilli. So according to that, if you consider option here, mainly 99th will be what? You should consider what? A will be 2, right? B will be what here? B will be mainly what basically that is what 4. C will be what here mainly comma shaped, that is what vibrio, that is 1, and the particularly D will be spiralum. Spiralum is related to what 3. So it should be what A2, B3, C1 and D3. So that will be the what your answer, that is what third option is correct. It is what here third option is correct, related to 99th question. Moving on to the next question, that is what 100 they are mentioned. So 100 related they are mentioned, arrange the following elements in a descending order of their contribution to the percentage weight of a human body. Right, in biomolecule only they have mentioned one particularly chart, right, that is oxygen, hydrogen, carbon and nitrogen. So choose the what correct option related to this. So sequence will be more percentage will be what oxygen, that is A, right. Then you will find out the presence of what here carbon, and then there will be a presence of something called as what the hydrogen, and then there will be a percentage of what nitrogen. But here is one little what difference. You consider they are mentioned ascending order. So nitrogen should be first, and then you should be find out what the presence of what hydrogen. So, but that option is not there. They have mentioned here on to according to this. But the most preferred answer will be what here. That is what fourth one, right? Because the sequence wise A, B, C, right, is correct even. Right, so only A, B, C, D is what correct. So most preferred answer is what here the fourth option, right. Then moving on to the next, that is what 101, that is they have asked length of a stem, right. 100th question, that is they have mentioned something called as what the length of a what stem at what time 0 is 20 centimeter. The arithmetic growth rate is 30 centimeter per day they have mentioned. Now, what is the length of the stem at the end of what 7th day they are asking. Now, based on this, mainly in arithmetic progression, length you are going to calculate LT is equal to L naught plus RT, right, right. So, LT is equal to L naught plus RT. Here, the given, what they have given, that you should try to understand. So, L naught, which is what 20 centimeter, right, because time 0 20 centimeter they have mentioned. Then they have mentioned something called as the R which is nothing but what 30 centimeter per day they have mentioned, right. R is nothing but what arithmetic growth rate is what R here 30 centimeter per day. Then a T is what time they have mentioned, that is what 7 days. You have to calculate related to what 7 days here. So how I am going to mention, L will be 7, L7, then 20 plus 30 into 7, 30 into 7 because growth rate into time, right, plus L naught is what 20. So based on this, if you consider 20 plus 110, and answer will be what here the particularly totally 230. How much? The 230. So answer will be the what second one, that is what 230, right, related to what length of what the stem based on what arithmetic growth rate. The formula to be remember, LT is equal to L naught plus RT, right. Now moving on to the next question, that is what 102 here. The given again statement based in gymnosperm. Statement 1 says in gymnosperm the male and female gamete remain within the sporangia. Statement 2 says in gymnosperm seeds are not covered. Seeds are not covered. In the light of above statement, choose the most appropriate answer from the what option below. Right. Now related to this, if you consider, right, here actually both the statements are what correct. So option will be what 4. Option will be what 4. Both statement 1 and statement 2 are correct. That is, in gymnosperm the male and female gametophyte remains within the particularly sporangia. Then again in gymnosperm the seeds are not covered. So here statement 1 and statement 2 both of them are correct. Then moving on to the next question, that is what 103 question, right. What it says, smooth endoplasmic reticulum dash right, is the major site for what synthesis of lipid, is actively what involved in protein synthesis, and is a site for the synthesis of carbohydrate and has a ribosome attached to its surface. If ribosome attached to the surface of endoplasmic reticulum, you call it as a rough endoplasmic reticulum. And what we know that smooth endoplasmic reticulum is actually the major site of, that is what option 1 is the major site for the synthesis of lipid. In animals you will find out what synthesis of lipid and even what steroidal hormones, which can be what secreted by means of smooth endoplasmic reticulum. So that will be the what option 1 will be the correct one. Moving on to the next question, that is 104, right, which of the following is not a characteristics of carbohydrate, is not a characteristics of carbohydrate, chordates. Which of the following is not a characteristics of what chordate, right? Central nervous system is dorsal, right? Central nervous system you will find out what with respect to the what mainly vertebral column. So you consider which is into the what dorsal, this portion is ventral and this is what dorsal. So central nervous system is at the what dorsal, that is what correct. Then absence of gills, right? Then the presence of what post anal part is what a tail, and presence of what a notochord. So according to this, the second option, that is what absence of what gills, absence of gills, which is not correct related to what chordates, right? So then moving on to the next question, that is what 105th one. How many molecule of pyruvic acids are produced at the end of glycolysis? At the end of glycolysis from 206 molecules of glucose. 206 molecules of what glucose. So you consider they are asking what related to 206 molecules of glucose, right? When glycolysis occurs, when glucose will get converted into pyruvate, that time it will form what 2 pyruvic acids, or 2 pyruvate will be formed. How many? 2 pyruvate will be formed here, right? So then 2 pyruvate, sorry, so mainly here, right? So here the question was what 105th, in glycolysis glucose will get converted into what, how many pyruvic acid? 2 pyruvic acid. So related to that, if you consider mainly that they are asking related to what 206 molecules of glucose, and when you calculate related to this, so as I know, if one glucose molecule can break down and forms how many pyruvic acid? 2 pyruvic acid, then definitely I am talking about, they are asking about what 206 molecules. So 206 molecules of glucose into 2 now, into what 2, and what it will give me? It will give me, that is what 412. It will give me what 412, and that will be the what here 105th option will be what third one. 105th option will be the third one, right? Then moving on to the what next question, that is related to, that is mainly how many molecules of 106th, like we have discussed 105th, now 106th, the correct sequence of adult cell cycle they are asking, or cell cycle or phases. So cell cycle you know, right? So cell cycle interphase consists of what G1, then it is consist of S, then it is consist of what G2, and lastly you will find out the presence of what M phase, right? Now sequence will be the what correct G1, S, G2 and M phase, and so according to that here, that is option 2 is what correct. They have mentioned option 2 what G1, S phase, G2 phase and M phase, right? Then moving on to the what next question, that is 107th question, right? So, which of the following represents the correct arrangement of bones in a lower limb of humans? They are asking lower limb, related to what? Lower limb. And lower limb will starts with what here? Femur, right? Femur bone is followed by means of what? Patella. Patella is followed by means of tibia, and tibia is followed by means of tarsals. So according to this, the option that will be the what? Second is correct. The option that is femur, patella, tibia and tarsal. That is what 107th answer you are going to see. Then moving on to the next question, that is 108. What they are asking, cell theory was formulated by. This is an easy question. You can find out that cell theory is actually formulated by means of Schliden and Schwann. Right? Then who carry forwarded it? Rudolf Virchow. And what they say, cell theory, all organisms are made up of cell and its product, right? And Rudolf Virchow, what he have given statement, pre-existing cells were there, so only existing one, omne cellulae, e cellula, what they have mentioned actually, right? So 108th, that will be the what? Fourth option here. Moving on to the next, that is 109. With respect to the 109, again statement based question, you can find out. यहाँ पे आपको बहुत सारे statement based questions आ रहे हैं यहाँ पे, right? So statement 1, what it says, the chromosomes are fully condensed at the end of prophase 1. No, statement 1, according to that, if you consider actual condensation of chromosome, fully condensed chromosome, you will find out in metaphase, because the correct appearance of chromosome can be seen in particularly metaphase, but they are mentioned end of the word prophase 1, right? Then meiosis 2 resembles what? Mitosis, sorry, meiosis 1 resembles to mitosis, they are saying. So meiosis 1 is actually called as a reductional division. It is actually called as reductional division. And what mitosis? Mitosis is nothing but, mitosis is what? Equational division. Does it resembles now? No. But meiosis 2 can resemble with what? Mitosis. Meiosis 2 can resemble what here? The mitosis. So according to that, the statement 1 is incorrect, right? And statement 2 is correct. Sorry, statement 1 is incorrect and statement 2 is even what? Incorrect, right? So 91th option will be what here? The particularly, that is what? First. Statement 1 and statement 2, both of them are false. They are talking about here what? Chromosomes are fully condensed at the end of prophase 1. No, it will be condensed on metaphase stage. And meiosis 1 resembles mitosis? No, meiosis 1 is called as reductional division, but meiosis 2 resembles mitosis. So according to this, you consider, according to that question, statement 1 and statement 2 are incorrect, and correct answer is what? Option 1. Moving on to the next question, that is 110. Which of the following statements regarding photorespirations are correct? Now photorespiration, you know, like based on what? Ribiscose, and ribiscose more affinity towards carbon or oxygen you consider. Based on that only you are going to find out. What they are saying, do not occur in C3 plant. No, it occurs in C3 plant. C3 plant do carry out what here? Photorespiration. But it is absent where? It is absent in C4 plants. Right, it is absent in C4 plants. Then CO2 is consumed and O2 is generated. No, CO2 is generated, O2 is consumed. Then the phosphoglycolate is formed. Yes, this is correct. Then no synthesis of ATP and NADPH. This is even correct. So according to that, C and D is correct and A and B is wrong. I have told you what A and B is wrong. Why A and B is wrong? Do not occur in C3 plant. No, it occurs in C3 plant. Photorespiration, which is a useless procedure. Then again, B, what they are saying, in photorespiration CO2 is consumed and O2 is generated, but it is actually ulta, right? O2 will be consumed and CO2 will be generated, and that's what we are calling it as photorespiration, right? Remaining phosphoglycolate will be formed, no synthesis of ATP and NADP, that is what actually correct. So based on C and D they are mentioned here, option 1 is correct, right? That is what C and D is the only correct option you can see here, right? Then moving on to the next, that is 111 question. 111th what they have mentioned, mainly which of the following are characteristics of prokaryotic cells? Prokaryotic cells character, that what you have to remember. Ribosomes are made up of 50s and 30s, yes, because ribosome which is 50s and 30s, what it will make 70s, right? Sedberg's unit, S stands for what? Sedberg unit, which is totally based on what? Density of what? This particularly what we call ribosomes, right? Then B, what they are saying, they are talking about what? They can have plasmid, yes. In prokaryotic cells they can have what? This particularly plasmid, which is an extra chromosomal DNA, and which is a favorite of what? Even biotechnologists, that is what we call plasmid, right? Then C consider, that is what? They contain mesosomes, yes. Mesosome presence you will find out in prokaryotic cell. Mesosomes presence you will find out in prokaryotic cells. The infolding is formed by means of what? Cell membrane. वही चीज़ है, वही उसको ही बोलते हैं mesosomes. Then they have peroxisomes. No, peroxisomes are present with respect to the eukaryotic cells. So according to that, here the 111th question answer is, that is what? 1 A, not 1, the particularly third one, that is A, B, C are what? Correct related to prokaryotic cells. They are correct related to prokaryotic cells. So option 3 will be the correct answer for the particularly question number 111. Moving on to the next question, 112. Let's see what it says. The number of action potential generated by sinoarterial node, that is SAN, in a healthy human being is dash per minute, right? So which is approximately related to what? 70 to 75, right? Action potential 70 to 75, and based on the action potential only the heart is going to carry out what? Lub and dub sound, right? So who is going to generate? That is sinoarterial node, that is what we call it as SAN, 70 to 75. That is what the correct answer for this. Moving on to the question number 13. Endomembrane system includes, mainly you should understand, endomembrane system means what? The nucleus formed membranous organelles which are being present inside the particularly cell, they are called as what? Endomembrane system, right? So mainly you consider who will be the what? Nucleus formed. One is ER, endoplasmic reticulum. One more is what? Golgi apparatus, right? I'll mention it as GA, right? One more is what here? Lysosome, right? Because lysosome is what? It is fully packed digestive protein, suicidal bag, even what we call it as, right? Then question number 4, the fourth one will be the what? Vacuole. In a plant, the endomembrane system includes what here? Vacuole event. So 113th option will be the fourth one, that is endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi apparatus and lysosome, which can be a part of endomembrane system in animals, but in plants one more extra added, that is what? Vacuole, right? That is what 113th answer, that will be the here the fourth one, that is endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi complex, lysosome and vacuole. They are known to be the endomembrane system. Now moving on to the question number 114th, right? Match the following again, right? Related to what they have mentioned, the mainly Mangifera indica, right? So again you have to match the particularly following. So directly mentioning, consider A will be the what? Third, right? A will be the third, family is nothing but what, Anacardiaceae, right? Then B will be what here, fifth one, that is nothing but what, genus is what, Mangifera. C is nothing but what here, second one, that is nothing but what, C is related to mainly, like class is related to what, Dicotyledone, right? Class is related to Dicotyledone. Then a D, they have mentioned what here, the fourth one, D, phylum they have mentioned. So phylum you consider, that is what, Angiospermae. But phylum, or with respect to the plant, what we call it as a division, right? And division will be what, Angiospermae. And the E1, E left out, that will be nothing but what, order. Order is what here, the particularly spindleless. Order is what here, spindleless, right? So according to this, you consider option will be what here, actually the third one. Option will be the what here, the third one. Now moving on to the next question, that is 115. Which of the following plant growth regulator promote internode elongation prior to the flowering in cabbage? Right, internode elongation prior to the what, flowering in particularly elongation. Internode elongation prior to the what, flowering in cabbage, right? So 115th correct answer will be what here, gibberellin. What it is, a gibberellin, the particularly what growth promoter you consider, right? So that is what option 1 is correct. Then moving on to the 116th question, the plastids that store xanthophyll is known as, the plastid which will store xanthophyll is known as what? Mainly you consider, they have mentioned chromoplast, elyroplast, amyloplast and chloroplast. Chloroplast got green color, chlorophyll presence you will find out. Elyroplast protein, amyloplast is related to carbohydrate, and chromoplast will be the what correct answer. What here? The chromoplast. Chromoplast will be the correct answer here. 116th, option 1 is what correct. Moving on to the next, that is 117th question. 117th question, photorespiration is catalyzed by ribisco and is shown below, right? So same photorespiration based question, right? Before even it got appeared. So according to that, if you consider RUBP plus O2 they have mentioned, 3-phosphoglycerate plus X you have to identify. What you have to identify? X. Then in what we know in this particularly photorespiration, what it will form? The phosphoglycolate. What it will form? Phosphoglycolate. The first option will be the correct. That is 2 molecules of phosphoglycolate, right? Glycolate will be formed. 2 molecules of what, phosphoglycolate will be what generated here. Then moving on to the next question, that is 118th. Again what here, match the following, right? That marginal placentation, exile placentation, parietal placentation, free central placentation, you have to match it with respect to the what, argemone, tomato and primrose and pea, right? So based on that, if I consider here, the option will be, that is A will be what, 4, B will be 2, C will be 1, D will be 3 here, right? So according to that, option 3 is correct, right? A will be 4, B will be 2, C will be 1, D will be what, 2 here, right? 3, D will be the word 3. That is what option 3 is correct. Next, moving on to the next question, 119th. What they are saying, which of the following are characteristic features of Solanaceae family? Only family in the particular NCERT, that is what Solanaceae family. Flowers are mainly characteristics features, what you have to understand here. So 119th, right? So mainly flowers are bisexual and actinomorphic, then that is correct. A is correct. Then B, calyx have 5 sepals and are united. Yes, that is even correct, right? Then, and the mainly androecium have 5 stamens and are epipetalous. That is even correct, right? try to remember here floral formula. D you consider, D ovary is what? Inferior, but ovary is here what? Superior. Ovary is what here? Superior. So according to that, option 4 will be correct. That is A, B and C is the characteristics of what? Solanaceae family. Right. Now, moving on to the next question, that is 120. Right. Which pigment has absorption peak at 700 nanometer in the photosynthetic reaction center PS1? Right, which pigment? Which pigment? Obviously, who is going to trap up the light and who is more photosynthetically active molecule? That is what? Chlorophyll A. So answer will be what? Option 1, that is what? Chlorophyll A. Right, which is known to be the what? Main reaction center. Right, so 120 is first option will be the what? Correct. Moving on to the next 21st question. What a 21st question says, mitochondrial inner membrane encloses. Mitochondrial inner membrane, what it encloses? Obviously it encloses something called as matrix. Right, that is what? Semi-fluid like structure where all type of what? Biochemical reaction can occur inside mitochondria. That is, you consider matrix. That will be the correct answer for 21st. Moving on to the 22nd, 122nd. Which of the following statement is incorrect? Right, incorrect you have to mention. Blood clot consists of fibrin. Correct. Fibrin is produced from fibrinogen. That is even correct. Fibrinogen is produced from fibrin. No, fibrin will actually form something called as fibrinogen. Right, right. Now what they are mentioning, fibrinogen is produced from the fibrin. They are mentioning it is ulta. Right. So moving fourth question, blood clot in response to an injury. Yes, which will be what? Response to injury. What will happen when you will get injured? During that period, your wound will get exposed to the air and heparin will actually get what? Oxidized. And when it will get oxidized, the blood clot will start begin. Right. So here option 3 will be the what? Incorrect. Option 3 will be the what? Incorrect. That what they have mentioned, fibrinogen is produced from the fibrin they have mentioned. But actually what will happen? Fibrinogen will produce fibrin. Right. So option 3 will be the what? Incorrect. Moving on to the next 123 question. Symbiotic association between fungi and algae are called as. Simple question. Fungi and algae is called as what? Symbiotic association. Lichens. What it is? The lichens. Right. So simple. In general question you have got. 124th next question, that is, which of the following is not a part of human central nerval system? Which of the following is not a part of human central nerval system? You will find out dura mater in brain, right? Then you consider pia mater, you will find out. Arachnoid even you can find out, but pericardium you will not find out. Pericardium, that is what? Option 3 is correct, because pericardium is the outermost layer of heart, which will actually help in to heart to bring up something called as what? Proper functioning. Even it will act as a what? Heat absorber, right? So it is, pericardium is related to heart, not related to what? Central neural system, right? Then question number 25. Which of the following plant growth regulator is used as herbicide? It is used as what? Herbicide they are mentioning, to kill them, right? So definitely what you are going to find out? The 2,4-D, right? The option will be the what here? The 2,4-D, right? Which will inhibit the growth of what? Herbicides. Remaining all of them are what? You consider abscisic acid, even what? Growth inhibitor, gibberellin, kinetin, they are what? Even growth promoters you can consider. So correct option, herbicide. As a herbicide, the mainly farmers are going to use, that is what? 2,4-D. Then question number 26th, 126th. How many turns of what? Kelvin cycle are required for the formation of 3 molecules of glucose? They are talking about 3 molecules of glucose. To form 3 molecules of glucose, how many type what the Kelvin cycle should occur? You should remember, every Kelvin cycle, every 1 Kelvin cycle 1 Kelvin cycle, you will find out 1 carbon fixation, right? And for the glucose, how many carbons required? 6 required. So 6 times the Kelvin cycle will get what? Formed, and then you are going to get what? One glucose molecule, that is what? 6 C6H12O6. So according to that, they are talking about what? 3 now. So 6 into 3, 6 into 3, how much you are going to get? 18. So correct option will be what here? That is 18. Correct option will be the 18. Right. Now, moving on to the next question, 127th. Right. Option 3 is correct for 126. That is what? 18. Moving on to the what? 127. Arrange the what following taxonomic category in ascending order. Right. Ascending order you have to mention. So ascending order, first what you should understand, you can keep this what categories, that genus, order, phylum, how you are going to remember based on the word simple mnemonics, that keep pot clean or family gets sick, right? Keep pot clean or family gets sick, based on that we can remember, and they are asking related to what? Ascending order, and based on that if you consider ascending order, fourth one, that will be the correct option. First will be the G, that is what? Species, right? Then second one will be the what? A, that will be the genus. Then the third one will be E, fourth one will be C, then B, then D, and then F, right? A is what? G is what here? Species. Ascending order they are asking. Descending order means you can go ahead, but you can write it and then you can answer it, right? So based on that only, G is what? Species, A is what? Genus, then E is nothing but family, then C is nothing but order, and B is nothing but what here? Class, and D is nothing but phylum, and lastly will be the what? Kingdom. So option 4 will be the correct for 127, right? Moving on to the next, that is 128, right? Simple question again. In frog, the number of pairs of cranial nerve arising from the what? Brain, and they are 10 pairs. Cranial nerve, they are what? 10 pairs, right? Then next, moving on to the what? Question number 129, right? Select the correct sequence of experiment that led to what? Gradual understanding of photosynthesis in green. So directly if you mention, right, related to this particularly question, that is what? 129th. First, who carried out Priestley, which is related to what? Oxygen you consider. Then Engenhaus, importance of what? These particular gases. Then Sach, and then you will find out what? Engelmann, right, who actually studied related to wavelength of what? Particularly light, which is actually required in photosynthesis related to green plant. So according to this, 129th answer will be here, that is mainly 1. Mainly what? Role of air, then release of what? Oxygen production, then production of glucose, absorption spectra of chlorophyll A and B, right? So option 1 will be the what? Correct here, related to 129th, right? Moving on to the next, that is 130 question. Mainly Spinospida class belonging to, it is belonging to mainly pteridophyte. Option 3 is correct. Mainly what here? Pteridophyte. Spinospida, Lycopsida, these are the what? Part of what? Pteridophytes. Then they have again given match the columning, that is list 1 and list 2 they have mentioned. So according to this, you consider direct form of answer, what mentioned? Fusion of protoplasm between gamete. Fusion of protoplasm between gamete, A will be what here? 2, that is we call it as plasmogamy. Then fusion of 2 nuclei, that is B will be the what? 3, that is karyogamy. And generation of what? Haploid spore, that will be what? Haploid spore. How we are going to find out? By means of meiosis. So C will be the what? 1. So according to this, A will be 2, B will be 3, and C will be what? 1. So A will be 2, B will be 3, and C will be 1. Here option 4 is what? Correct. Option 4 is correct. Then question number 32, 132, right? So What 132 says, simple question, which of the following is not a prokaryotic? Blue green algae, cyanobacteria, we call it as eubacteria, mycoplasma, even a bacteria. Fungi is what actually eukaryotic, multicellular form of eukaryotic. Exception is what one yeast consider, and bacteria they have mentioned. Bacteria, mycoplasma and algae, they are belonging to what prokaryotic. But who is not belonging? Fungi is not belonging. So option 3 is what? Not belonging to the prokaryotic. That is what fungi, because they are eukaryotic in nature. Then question number 33, 133 here. Mainly what they have mentioned, statement based again. When any plane passes through the central axis of the body, divides the organism into two identical halves, it is called as what? Radial symmetry. Then in phylum Echinodermata, both adult and larval are radially symmetrical. No, option statement 2 is what? Incorrect. Statement 2 is incorrect. Right, statement 2 is incorrect, because in mainly echinoderm, adult will be what? Mainly adult will be related to what? Radial type of symmetry, larval will be of bilateral type of symmetry. So statement 2 is incorrect. But statement 1, any plane passing through the central axis of the body divides into organism into two equal halves. Any plane, right? Any vertical plane. So that is correct definition for radial symmetry. So statement 1 is correct. Right, statement 1 is correct, statement 2 is incorrect. So according to that, 133, statement 1. So answer will be what here? That is 2. Statement 1 is correct, but statement 2 is incorrect. Moving on to the next, that is question number 133. 133, what it says? Genus represents. What genus represents? Genus represents a group of closely related species. It is related to group of closely related species. Sorry, 134th question. So which is genus represents mainly group of closely related species. That is what option 2 is correct for this. Right, and they have mentioned mad cow disease is caused by. Mad cow disease is caused by means of pyrons. It is caused by means of what? Pyrons. Again simple question and simple answer, that is what? Pyron. Right, moving on to the what next? The opening between the what? Right atrium and the right ventricle is guarded by. Opening between the right atrium and right ventricle is guided by means of tricuspid valve. It is guided by means of tricuspid valve. Right. In left side it will be what? Bicuspid valve, even mitral valve what we call it as. So option 1 will be the correct, that is what? Tricuspid valve. Now moving on to the next question, 137. The inactive form of Bt toxin is converted to the active form in the insect gut. In the insect gut due to the what? Alkaline pH. Due to the what here? The alkaline pH. That is what 136th answer, 137th answer. That is mainly 4th, due to the what? Mainly alkaline pH. Due to the mainly what here? Alkaline pH. Inactivated toxin will get converted into the toxic form of what? Protein. Right. Moving on to the next question, that is what? 138. Right. Transformation, cloning and selection and ORI what they are talked about. Right. So mainly transformation. Right. Transformation is related to what here? Related to antibiotic. Right. So that is what? 4th you consider. Right. Sorry. Related to a transfer of DNA to the what? Host bacteria, that is transformation. A will be the what? 2. Then B, what they are talking about? Cloning site. Cloning site, where you will find out? Mainly cloning site will be related to restriction enzymes. Then C, selection. Selection is based on what? Antibiotic. Right, that is what? C4. And D, ORI, which is related to what here? Mainly ORI is related to replication. So that is what? D, that origin of replication. So A2, B1, C4 and D3, and option will be the what here? The 4th one. Option will be the 4th one. Moving on to the next question, 139. How many theca are present in each lobe of typical bilobed anther of bilobed angiosperm anther. So how many thecas? Mainly 2 thecas, right? Because of that only we call it as a dithecus. We call it as what? A dithecus. So option 4 is what? Correct, right? Then moving on to the next 140, which of the following hormone is not secreted by human placenta? Human placenta not secreted, like estrogen is secreted, progesterone secreted, LH is not secreted because LH is a pituitary hormone. LH is what? Pituitary hormone, luteinizing hormone, right? FSH and LH both are of them are what? Brain based pituitary hormone. HCG, human chorionic gonadotropin, that is even secreted by placenta. So now which is not secreted? LH is not secreted. So option 3 is what? Correct. Moving on to the fourth, right, that sperm motility is due to ciliary movement, they have talked, amoeboid movement, muscular movement, flagellary movement. Now sperm got something called as what? Long tail-like structure, and the tail-like structure we usually represent is related to flagellary movement. So option 4 is correct, that is what? Flagellary movement, right? Moving on to the 142, again what? Statement based, assertion and reasons. In an experiment, Mendel observed that F1 progeny plant are tall. F1 progenies are what? Tall, and none are what? Dwarf. Reason: stem height is a contrasting trait, with tall being dominant and dwarf being recessive. Now you have to find out either assertion reason is correct, or is it a correct explanation for what? Reason is a correct explanation for what? Assertion. So according to that 142, if you consider, right, here option 4 will be the correct, that is both assertion and reasons are correct, and reason is the correct explanation of what? Assertion. Because of that only in F1 progeny he got what? Tall, right? So option 4 is correct. Moving on to the next 143. During PCR, primer bind to the what? DNA strands in the dash step, right? That will be the what? Annealing phase, annealing step. That will be the what? Annealing. Because denaturation में क्या होगा? DNA will get what? Separate, or strands of DNA will get separate. Annealing में we are going to add reverse and forward primer, and that is what they are asking about, primer binding to the what? DNA. Annealing, that is what? Second. And third one will be the what? Extension. अभी DNA नया strands of DNA will go on what? Synthesizing over, that is what? Extension, right? Now mainly according to this 114, the second one will be the correct, that is annealing. Moving on to the next question number 144. Which of the following plant produces non-albuminous seeds? Non-albuminous seeds produce करता है, वो रहेगा कौन सा? P, option 3, right? That is what? Option 3, P. Which of the following plant produces non-albuminous seeds, right? Moving on to the next question 145. Here what you have to find out, for a person with a blood group O, which of the following is not a possible combination of parents? Not possible. O blood group नहीं आना चाहिए. Blood group of genotype, like for first क्या mention किया है? Father IA small I and mother IA small I. So definitely यहाँ पे O आएगा. Then IB small I and IB small I, यहाँ पे भी I आएगा. But father, option 3 पे देखो, father IA IB, जहाँ पे IA IB आएगा और उसके साथ और एक हेट्रोजाइगस आएगा IA स्मॉल आई, तो डेफिनेटली यहाँ पे ब्लड ग्रुप कौन सा नहीं आएगा? ओ नहीं आएगा. सो करेक्ट ऑप्शन क्या होगा यहाँ पे? थर्ड वन, दैट इज द फादर हैव IA IB AB blood group and mother got something called as the A blood group with an recessive gene small I. So you will not get here blood group O, right? Moving on to the next 146th. Which of the following is used a clot buster? Clot buster, direct question even you consider, that is nothing but what? Streptokinase enzyme produced by means of a bacteria called as streptococcus, right? Streptokinase enzyme. Moving on to the next question 147th, right? यहाँ पे 146 को आंसर रहेगा 4, right? So 147th, arrange the following in a descending order. ऑफ नंबर ऑफ स्पीशीज इन अमेजॉन रेन फॉरेस्ट. अमेजॉन रेन फॉरेस्ट में बिगिन होगा इनवर्टिब्रेट से. बिगिन कहाँ से होगा? इनवर्टिब्रेट से, बिकॉज इनवर्टिब्रेट में ही ज़्यादातर इनवर्टिब्रेट्स ही ज़्यादातर आप अमेजॉन फॉरेस्ट में पाओगे, राइट. सो दैट इज डी, राइट. देन ए, राइट. देन सी, देन बी एंड देन ई, राइट. सो ए में क्या होगा? इनवर्टिब्रेट. सॉरी, डी में क्या होगा? इनवर्टिब्रेट. ए में क्या होगा? प्लांट्स. सी में क्या होगा? बर्ड्स, सॉरी फिशेस. फिशेस के बाद बर्ड्स, बर्ड्स के बाद मैमल्स. सो दिस विल बी द वर्ड. ऑप्शन 1 will be the word correct, which is actually mentioned in your mainly biodiversity conservation. Given statement 148th given statement with two statements. Plasmids are autonomously replicating DNA. सही है. Plasmids are extra chromosomal DNA. So based on this, if you consider both the statements are what correct. Statement 1 and statement 2 is what correct. इससे ऑप्शन क्या निकलेगा? That is what option 4. That is statement 1 and statements 2 are what correct. Moving on to the next 149. Again, like main statement based only. 4 limbs of human and bat are homologous. 4 limbs of human and bat have a similar anatomical structure. When we are calling it as homologous organs, when we are calling it as what? Homologous organs, what does it means? What does it means? It means what? They got what? Similar anatomical origin is same, anatomical structure is same, but what? Function might get what? Differ, right? So 4 limbs of human bat are homologous organs. Yes, it is correct. 4 limbs of human and bat have a similar anatomical structure. It is even correct. And both A and R are correct. And R is the correct explanation of what? Assertion. So answer क्या आएगा यहाँ पे? 4th one. Answer is 4th one. Moving on to 150 question. See again, which of the following statement about the reabsorption process related to what? Henle's loop are correct, right? The descending limb of Henle's loop is permeable to the water but almost impermeable to the electrolyte. Almost impermeable to the electrolyte. That is what correct. So 115th में A correct आएगा, right? Then B क्या बोलेगा? Urine gets what? Concentrated in Henle's loop, right? So mainly ये भी correct आएगा, right? Right. And mainly reabsorption of sodium and water takes place in Henle's loop. No, it will takes place with DCT. So C will be the what? Incorrect. And lastly, active or passive transport of electrolyte occur in the ascending limb of what? Henle's loop. ये भी correct आएगा. So A, B and D is correct, right? So according to that, option is what? 3rd one. Option is what? 3rd one. 150th answer is the option 3rd one, right? Moving on to the next 151. Which of the following are secondary lymphoid organs? Which of the following are secondary lymphoid organs? So tonsils is a secondary lymphoid organ, spleen is a secondary lymphoid organ, but bone and thymus are known to be the primary lymphoid organs. So B and C. C, this B and C, both of them are secondary lymphoid organs related to 150. So B and C option किस पे आ रहा है? Option 1. So option 1 is correct. 151th option 1 is correct, right? Then moving on to the next question, 152, right? Which of the following is correct order of arrangement of vertebrates column from the what? Head to toe. Head to toe they are asking about, right? So वहाँ पे क्या आएगा? First पहला आएगा, I'll just write which will be the correct one. First आएगा cervical, फिर आएगा thoracic, right? Thoracic to what? Lumbar, lumbar to what? The mainly sacrum, then coccyx. So ये ऑप्शन अगर मैं देखूंगा वो आएगा 3rd one. 152 का आंसर है 3rd one, right? Then moving on to the next question. 152 हो गया, 3rd one ऑप्शन आ गया. 153, right? What question says? If the diploid chromosome number of a typical angiosperm is 36, what would be the chromosome number in the endosperm, in its endosperm, right? They are talking about what, endosperm, right? And here the option will be the second one, that will be the what, 54. Endosperm fusion, you consider fusion basis, you can what, calculate, and that what you are going to get is what, 54. Diploid they have mentioned, right? So based on that you consider 54th is what answer. So question number 154, right? Sponges exchange CO2 with what, O2 with what, CO2 by moist cuticle, tracheal tubes, gills, simple diffusion over their entire surface. Yes, simple diffusion over their entire surface. That is what option 4 is correct related to sponges, right? Then 155 क्वेश्चन क्या बोल रहा है, विच ऑफ द फॉलोइंग डिसीज इज नॉट सेक्शुअली ट्रांसमिटेड. Sexually transmitted, they have mentioned tuberculosis, gonorrhea, genital wart and syphilis. So tuberculosis, which is not the particularly sexually transmitted disease. Moving on to the next question, 156. So 55 के लिए option आएगा 1, right? So 156, which of the following female gametophyte of an angiosperm help in guiding the pollen tube forward fertilizing the egg, right? Synergies, central cells, polar nuclei and antipodal cells. So pollen tube को guide कौन करेगा, synergids करेगा. So that is what 156th option 1 will be the correct. Then moving on to the next 157, again match the columns, right? So based on what they have mentioned, excess growth hormone, luteinizing hormone, vasopressin, oxytocin. You have to what mainly answer according to that, right? So directly if you consider here, A will be what, 3, excess growth hormone, that is what, acromegaly, right? Then B, luteinizing hormone they have mentioned. Luteinizing hormone mainly related to what, ovulation, right? Related to what here, ovulation. B will be 4. C, vasopressin. Vasopressin means what, ADH, reabsorption of water and electrolyte in kidney, that you are going to find out, right? Mainly 1. And then D में क्या mention किया, oxytocin. So contraction of uterus during childbirth, that is what, D will be the 2. So correct option according to this, that will be what, 1. A will be 3, B will be 4, C will be 1 and D will be 2, right? Now moving on to the next question 158. The covering of ovum at ovulation is, covering of ovum at the ovulation is, at the ovulation वो आंसर आएगा zone of pellucida, and that is what option 2, zone of pellucida. During the ovulation, secondary oocyte will be covered up by means of what, zone of pellucida. Moving on to the next 159, least 1 with what, least 2, like both species are harmed, like competition means organism and population से question है, interaction के basis पे. So based on that, if you consider, the third option is what correct, that is A will be 3. What it says, both species are harmed, that is what, competition. B you consider, B पे क्या आएगा, 1, that is one species is harmed and other will be what, benefited, predation. C पे क्या आएगा, second one, that both species are benefited, that is what, mutualism, right? Then D is nothing but what, fourth one, that is here one is benefited while other is has no effect, that is what, commensalism. So according to that, option 3 is correct. Now moving on to the next, that is what, 160 पे, which of the following structure is not a part of male reproductive system, is not a part of male reproductive system. Epididymics male reproductive system में आएगा. Vasa efferentia, yes it is present. Infundibulum is a part of female reproductive system, right? So here which is not a part of male, that is infundibulum, that is third one. Then fourth they have mentioned rated testis, important one you will find out in female, in male. 161 question, which of the following are a primary consumer in a food chain? Which of the following are a primary consumer in food chain? They are the what? Herbivores. They are what here? The herbivores. Second one, right? Mainly, right? Then moving on to the next 162. 162 given below are what two statements again here. Abandoned tortoise in the Galapagos Island became extinct with a decade after a goat were introduced. Then goats were more efficient at browsing than the amazon tortoise. So यहाँ पे जो आंसर है वो आएगा fourth one. That is what fourth one 162. Both like A and R are correct, and R is the correct explanation of what A. Moving on to 163. Which of the following statement about lac operon is correct? Right. So lac operon के बारे में correct जो है उसको हमें find out करना है यहाँ पे. Right. So यहाँ पे जो आएगा वो रहेगा lactose activates the repressor to bind the operator. No. Right. Then gene I, Z, Y and A shares what single common promoter? No. Then galactose can act as a what inducer of a lac operon? No. Gene 1 is what constitutively expressed. So यहाँ पे जो भी आएगा वो रहेगा option 4 gene I, which is what constitutively expressed. Right, that is what fourth one. 164th question. Which of the following statement is correct related to plasmodium? They are talking about plasmodium. Plasmodium क्या बोल रहे हैं यहाँ पे? Reproduction sexually in RBCs, gametophyte develop in mosquito gut, fertilization takes place in mosquito gut, reproduce sexually in a liver cells. Right. So mainly fertilization जो भी होगा वो होगा gut के mosquito के gut पे. So 63 का आंसर रहेगा यहाँ पे 3. Right. That is what fertilization takes place in mosquito gut. Right. So moving on to 65th question. Right, they are mentioned related to Hardy-Weinberg's principle. A population of diploid organism is at Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, and if the frequency of allele A is 0.1 and the frequency of AA is, they asked, and that will be the fourth option, that is 0.01. So 0.01, fourth option. Moving on to the next question, 166. Adaptive radiation in placental mammal and Australian marsupials leading to the similarity between a distinct species is an example. Is an example of what here? Convergent evolution. Is an example of what? Convergent evolution. That is option 1 is correct. Then 167th. Colostrum secreted by a mother during the initial days of lactation is abundant of what? Simple question, that is IgA. That will be the correct one, and option 2 is correct for 167th question. 168th question, again as assertion and reason based, statement based. Assertion, what it says: in recombinant DNA technology, lysosome is used for disrupting the bacterial cells, while cellulase is for what? Plant cells. Right. Second, what it is saying, reason: isolation of genetic material need a disruption of cell. Right. So based on that, if you consider here, 64th will be the correct, because assertion and reasons are correct, and reason is the correct explanation of what assertion. 168 का आंसर आएगा fourth one. Moving on to the next 169. 169, right. So ovulation is statement based again. Ovulation is caused by LH surge leading to the rupture of Graafian follicle. Right. Then Graafian follicle remains after ovulation, transforms into what? Corpus luteum, and secretes large amount of what? Estrogen. So estrogen नहीं होगा यहाँ पे, progesterone आएगा. Right. So answer based on that, if you consider statement 1 is correct. Right. Statement 1 is correct. Statement 2 is incorrect, because अगर Graafian follicle रहेगा भी, वो किस में convert होगा? Corpus luteum में. So obviously what it will secrete? It will secrete progesterone, not the estrogen. So statement 2 is correct. Statement 1 is correct. Statement 2 is incorrect. So according to that, here option will be the what? 2. 169th answer is what? 2. Then 70, right, 170. Natural selection can lead to. Natural selection can lead to here what? One is stabilization, then one more is, that is what, mainly directional change, and lastly will be the what? Disruptive. Genetic drift will not come into what? Natural selection. So based on that, A, C and D is correct, and that is what option 1 is correct, 170th. Right. Moving on to the next, 171. The method of what? Directly of injecting a sperm into the ovum in a assisted reproductive technology is called as, that is called as ICSI, intracytoplasmic sperm injection. So option 2 will be the correct, that is intracytoplasmic sperm injection. Moving on to the next, that is 172. 172. Which of the following is used as an effective sedative and a painkiller for the what? Treating post surgery? Obviously painkiller who will be, that is what? Morphine. Morphine is a correct option, right, which will act as a painkiller. Then 173. Moving on to the 173. Given below are what? Two statements. Down syndrome is caused by the what? Absence of one of what? X chromosome. No, Down syndrome is caused by means of addition of one chromosome, that to what? Autosomal way on 21st pair, right. Then Turner syndrome is caused by the presence of an additional copy of what? Chromosome. So according to this, if we consider here, the statement 1 is wrong, right, and statement 2 is even wrong. Statement 2 is even wrong. टर्नर में एक क्रोमोसोम एब्सेंट रहेगा, राइट. यहाँ पे एडिशन होगा डाउन सिंड्रोम में, बट वो भी वो कहाँ पे होगा? 21st पेयर में होगा, right, not onto the what? Related to X chromosome. So both the statements are what? Wrong here. So answer will be here the first one. Answer will be the what? Here the first one, right. Now moving on to the next, that is 174. 174. The which of the following is not evidence for the what? Evolution? Is not a evidence for what? Evolution. That is embryological support for evolution as proposed by the Ernest Haeckel. It is not an evidence, right. So it got what? Again disproved by the particularly Meyerhoff, right. Then moving on to the next, 175. 175. That is what? Given below are two statements, right. One is assertion reason based. Here what they have mentioned, a logistic growth model of a population is considered more realistic than the exponential growth model. Then reason says resources are finite, and in the light of what? Above statement, resources are finite, in the light of above statement find out what most appropriate. इस पे जो आएगा option, that will be the fourth one. Here both assertion and reasons are correct, and reason is the correct explanation of what? Assertion. Moving on to the next question, 176th, right. Again statement based. Modern Homo sapien arose in Australia and moved across what continent? Statement 2 says Homo sapien arose around what? 75,000 to 10,000 years ago, right. Then appropriate you have to find out. So 176 को आएगा. Statement 1 is incorrect. Statement 1 is incorrect. And statement 2 is correct. Statement 2 is correct, right. Now moving on to the question number 177. 177. Consider a population of 10 million cells given per capita birth rate of what? Birth rate of 0.002, and the per capita death rate is 0.002. The expected number of cells after what? 10 generation. So they have given what? 10 generation. They have mentioned what? 10 millions. 10 million cells they have mentioned, and this can be calculated based on what? Growth rate mainly, that is B minus T. here what 0.002 minus 0.002, which will give what 0. So correct answer what remains that many only, that is what 10 millions only, right? It remains what here only 10 millions. Option 2 is what correct related to this. Now moving on to the next question, 178. 178 mainly what you have to do, following statements are what correct, which of the following statements are correct? Then energy flow from producer to the consumer is unidirectional. Energy pyramid can never be inverted, right? And third, transfer of energy flows the 1% law. No, it follows the particularly 10% law. So C is what incorrect. So correct answer according to this 117th, that is 178, that will be 1. A and B is what the correct one, right? Moving on to the next 179. Muscle contraction is initiated by signal sent by the central nervous system by the release of acetylcholine. Acetylcholine. These are the what message which will be sent to the what muscles to bring up something called as the muscle contraction, right? Then option 4 will be the what correct for that. Now 118th, which of the following enzyme synthesizes precursor mRNA? mRNA they are talking about, and it is again a direct question. Option 1 will be the correct, that is RNA polymerase 2, right? So this is all about what question code 80, that what we have discussed related to what 21st June NEET examination, RE-NEET examination. Hope this options or this particularly answers what I have given may get a fruitful result for you people, and you people can get crack this particular NEET. Thank you so much, and all the best for your future and your golden life.